Greetings.
Hey, Angela, we still have to wait for Councilmember Morel to get in. So before we get
Okay.
started,
Do we know how much longer he'll be? I'm just curious.
I think he's on his way down. So
Okay.
I just don't want to get started without him. All right. Well, it looks like Councilmember Morel is not going to be able to attend. So I will try to answer the questions on the relocation assistance and just and his portion of the presentation and rental assistance. But I can't answer all the appraisal information.
What I would like to do, if this can help, And I want to start and first and foremost by just always saying a deep appreciation for the residents of Gordon Plaza. Because I know people are coming from a lot of things today. The weather is what it is outside, and we would just want to honor everybody's humanity in the space. So we don't want to be here long today. What we would like to do is just go through some things, and we believe between having council representation and also having, thank you for being here today, in place for the administration, that we can just talk through a few things. And I think we can move through pretty seamlessly if we could do just touch on some things, and you all, if you have updates, provide them. And if it's a yes or no, or we need to find out, then we can note it. Because there were information that was sent over, and then the residents have responses, and we understand that there's some things that are gonna have to happen this week. And we understand that. So we're clear about that, but we just want to name the things to see if there's something that you might have an update about. If there's a question, we just want to keep it moving. We think we can be done in here in 30 minutes.
Okay, I love it.
You love it?
I love it.
Okay, let's go.
And by the way, you all already knew that CAO Montano could not be here, so Joe
We did
Threat.
communicate.
Yeah, he did. So Joe Threat is here in his place. So I have obviously the communication that Gordon Plaza residents sent to us. I believe this was last night. So if you want, we can kind of go bullet
Yeah.
point by bullet point.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So let's start with the appraisals. And if you all don't mind, nobody minds if I read out what's written here? Nobody
ahead.
minds? Okay. All right. So first, as residents of Gordon Plaza, we select Louisiana licensed appraiser Christopher Baker, license number APR 1994 CGA, to serve in the capacity of appraiser to conduct appraisals of the properties in Gordon Plaza. We request that he be contacted as soon as possible, and then it lists his email address. So yes, we will work to contact him as soon as possible, which actually leads into the second bullet point, which says, we request that Mr. Baker is contacted by someone, Montano, Moreno, Morel, Lampkin, or Tuazolo, directly to ensure non-antagonistic communication takes place with the appraiser. Yes, you have my commitment that I will reach out to Mr. Baker. I will CC Mr. Montano and Mr. Threat along with the city attorney's office, so we can start that line of communication. I also want to mention that I have been in touch with the city attorney's office, and they are in touch with their contracts person within the city attorney's office, so that they can start kind of putting the pieces together on what it's going to take to get him on board as quickly as possible. So that leads us actually into the next bullet point, which says, for our collective benefit of minimizing confusion, we also do not believe that the appraiser should have to engage directly with any members of the private law firm who chose the previously assigned appraiser, nor should there be any delays in retaining the paying of the appraiser so that the appraisals may begin immediately. For us, that means this week. We have no desire to prolong this process. I don't have any desire to prolong this process either. I do want him to get signed up as quickly as possible. I can't make the commitment for this week because I just don't know how quickly contracts is going to get this done, but I will push for this week if possible. All right, so then that brings us to relocation assistance. Like I said, this was Councilmember Morel's section. He thought that the meeting was going to get rescheduled, so he apologizes. Okay.
I want to note something about that, just so people know. I want to say and note for the record that Gilbert Montano did proactively communicate and indicate that if he could not be here, he would adjust accordingly. The residents did ask for the meeting to continue, and sometimes people say that a meeting's going to be modified, but if there is no confirmation from the residents, I would just ask that we proceed forward. So just as a universal checkpoint, there was no mention of the meeting being rescheduled by any of us.
Yeah, and you also did respond back that you did want it to move forward.
Correct.
Is why we're here today.
Correct.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And Angela, just
Yeah.
on behalf of Mr. Montano, I was on leave in Colorado Springs. Gilbert asked me to come to this meeting. I took a red eye last night.
I
to be here
appreciate it.
today.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thread. Appreciate that. Okay, so please be patient with me as I try to answer these questions and just understand that I may not have the answer for you, but if I don't, I will get it to you in writing by Councilmember Morel by tomorrow. All right, as residents of Gordon Plaza, we would like a detailed update on the status during the next Gordon Plaza Task Force meeting. We also want to see the updated drafts of any agreement documents that impact us, outline any information or provide specific directions for payment. We want to know whom to contact and their hours of availability. We desire this process to be of ease and as simple as possible. So I do not have those documents. I don't have those documents. At the point that invoices are submitted, we would like to know the full range of the easiest and most seamless ways for these funds to be submitted, how TCA will make the payments and the expected turnaround time for payments. This way we can communicate proactively and clearly with the movers. Another good question. I'm sorry.
And just for the record, just so that everyone here knows, this communication being sent over to the city in advance is with the understanding that if these things have not been determined yet, the residents are putting it forward so that we don't have to wait until the last minute when these things come. So while appraisal activity is transpiring, these things can be attended to. So by the time we get there, we're ready to go. So this gives room and space rather than people being rushed on the front end or dragged on the back end, that people can get those things in order. So if there are answers to those things, that's fine. And if they're not, we're putting them out there in advance so that by the time we come back to the next meeting, we're not talking about those things from scratch. And some of those things may not have come up in conversation yet, so we're asking them to be a part of the conversation.
On the lump sum, so the next question is about, we request that each resident be provided a lump sum payment to support this process for the specific relocation expenses, which would not only be justified, but allow for ease in the process and prevent the property owners from having to seek reimbursement. From what I understand, that you would still have to get, from the last meeting, from what I recall from the last meeting, that you would still have to get some type of estimate though from the movers.
Okay, so maybe I can help with this.
Okay.
And thank you, Mr. Jothrop, for being here, because you may be able to answer these questions. And even if not today, it can be something to look forward to. So one of the things, and I want to make it very, very clear, so this is not, these things don't get confused, is we're talking about 3 different things in the context of relocation assistance. So one component of that is understanding that there's the temporary housing for residents. That's separate and apart from number 2, which comes to what is necessary for the actual relocation cost for moving expenses, meaning we just call in a mover, a company to move our stuff, and that's getting paid for through TCA. The third thing we're bringing up is in the context of understanding that with the $35 million funds in regards to relocation can be pulled from those funds. And so what we're saying is that, and if there's something you need to verify and check on, go right on ahead. But we just want to note that relocation assistance also does include any expenses connected to packing, unpacking, disconnecting, disassembling, reconnecting equipment, personal property, utility connections, and those kinds of things. And I'm sure that has not come up in a way that it's been generated into the conversation because it hasn't made it over to the residents. So we are just simply putting it out there because that's part of relocation expenses. And so in that document that you have, that Council President Moreno has, we put the reference to that so that you can go and verify it regarding relocation assistance, because we don't want the residents to have any problem with that. Plus, the other part we wanted to just name is that it has been named many, many times in past conversations, and we want to make sure people do not forget that there be no concern from the city of New Orleans that agencies are, and I quote, allowed to compensate displaced persons for actual and reasonable expenses. And that is in the law, section 38:3104, but I'll let you go look all that up. I just want to make sure on the front end, Mr. Threat, that you don't run into barriers when you go back to find out that should be a part of the expense. So what we're saying is, we understand that when it comes to the moving expenses for the moving company, that they would contact the moving company, acquire the moving company, TCA would pay for it, that would be that. If there are things for consideration in regards to this, these components here, then we would ask you to articulate the same way that it's been articulated here for us to know. But we're going on record again as saying section 38:3104, talking about making sure that people can be compensated. It does not say that it requires an invoice to be involved in that, but I will let you figure that out. We can keep moving. We can go on.
All right, thank you for that, Angela. Appreciate it. Okay, I've been working with my chief of staff here who's been in meetings with Councilmember Morell's office to try to answer the following questions.
Mhm.
So, all right, so that leads us to, first real quick, I don't want to move away from the relocation expenses real quick. I'm going to get to rental assistance in a second, but on the relocation piece, that yes, there very much is work on that being beyond just the moving expenses. So that work is happening.
Thank you,
Thank
you.
And then the other piece now leads us to the rental assistance piece. Andrew's been working on this because remember the rental assistance piece, we're going to need to amend the current ordinance that deals with just specific rental assistance.
Yeah.
So we're going to have to amend it so that we can specifically take care of you all. Andrew's been working with Councilmember Morell's office on this, so he can fill us in on what he knows.
Sure. Thank you, Council President. So we've been working with Mr. Corwin as of last Friday. The intention here, and I can only speak not on behalf of, but my appraisal of the conversations we've had with Councilmember Morell's office, is that we would take that his fund that he's already create an amendment that would be done by ordinance that would appear on the council agenda, which would delineate a fund that would be for rental assistance for displaced rental assistance for Gordon Plaza residents displaced by the acquisition process for up to 1 year of rental assistance. And we would be doing that at what we would like to do is a New Orleans market rate. So like the entire city's market rate, not one specific area. So there'd be an average market rate rental assistance number per month that would be and you would find your own rental unit, for instance, across the city in that timeline. The challenge, of course, is to make sure that the fund is not, we cannot just say it's for only Gordon Plaza residents. I was discussing this earlier. So what we do legally is create a fund that would have a time limited exposure. So the city would have it for, let's say, a year, for that year, as we discussed. And then it would describe people living on land that's environmentally compromised that the city is acquiring for a specific purpose. Of course, there are other locations throughout the city that might also be eligible. We don't want to do anything about that, of course, to make sure that's equal for everybody. But it would be a simple process where we would just like there is a rental assistance program today, it would just be specific for people who are in this category, which would include Gordon Plaza residents, both renters and homeowners who are seeking a new place to live, but would not have found it. And I just want to point out, and I think we talked about this before, the last piece about closing time. So once people agree to the purchase price of their property, I think the city's already indicated, and we would make sure that there would be a flexibility around closing so that nobody would be physically relocated until either they have a rental situation, a place to rent, or have found a healthy home of their choice. So there would be no rush. Once you agreed, obviously everyone agrees, no takebacks kind of thing, but you agree that the purchase will go through, then there would be no rush for residents to then get the heck out, right? There would be none of that, because I know that would be a great amount of anxiety and stress on folks. And so I think the most efficacious way and the most fair way to do that is to simply provide a long close. So that closing would occur at a time of residents choosing. So let's say you bought a new healthy home of your choice, you would be able to close on your property and then subsequently close on your purchased home in the same timeline. I think that's an important piece. So I hope that answers some of those questions, but I want to stop there and let Councilmember Morell give more detail on his rental assistance fund when he's available.
Yes, thank you for that, because the residents have articulated multiple times that has been a major concern for them. And so I know that when we get to the point in time where we're talking about purchase agreements or purchase contracts, in those nuances, we definitely are going to ask for draft documents in advance. There have been some general forms that were provided maybe a couple months ago that are just very standard forms, but we understand that they would have to be tailored.
Yeah, and that's actually part of the comments that is in the list of questions that we received about residents being provided the drafts of purchase contracts to have them reviewed in advance to support ease of process for our community. Yeah, no doubt about it. You have my commitment that we'll make sure to get that done.
Okay.
And the next one that we have also in vein of once we get to the purchase piece, let's see, the residents of Gordon Plaza, we would like for a member of Bayou Title to attend an upcoming Gordon Plaza Task Force meeting to provide a clear overview of the capacity of Bayou Title to engage any of the 67 property owners as needed during this process. We would like to know the hours, appointments, yeah, this is all very important.
Yeah.
I think that this would be actually a great task force meeting to have, because that's information I would actually like as
Yes.
well.
Please,
So,
thank you.
yeah.
One more thing, just before we go deeper into the title company piece.
Sure.
I just want to make sure, I know this is being said, but I want to make sure it's not being assumed and anything gets lost in the sauce or falls through the cracks. When it comes to the relocation, when it comes to the moving expenses, right? We want to make sure that when it comes the opportunity for those calls to be made to the moving company, that not only applies to the owners, but also applies to the renters.
Yeah.
And we understand that the owners would only be engaging in one move, meaning that if they decided to go into temporary housing, they might be packing up as they're kind of going back and forth. We understand, though, that when it comes to the renters, we want them to be able to go into their new healthy home of choice. We understand that they would also be included in the relocation assistance, and they would need support moving the belongings.
Yes, that's always been the
Okay,
intent.
just wanted to put it on the record. Okay, thank you.
Okay, next, so, all right, so I've moved on from the bringing in Bayou Title. I think that's great. We're going to try to get them scheduled in as quickly as possible. I'll go ahead and reach out to them myself. All right, let's see. Okay, we want to ensure that should there be a resident of Gordon Plaza who does not immediately clear title, that they have the opportunity to demonstrate clearance if they can confirm otherwise, and if there is an outstanding deed, that must be paid, that they are provided cashier's checks for the amounts owed separate from their payout balance, for which residents of Gordon Plaza request cashier's checks for the difference in the pursuit of their own healthy homes choice. Yeah, I think that goes kind of in line with what we had committed to, that really issues during closing, that we're going to make sure that things are done at the advantage of the residents. So
Yes.
I think that goes in line with that commitment.
The key to this part here with the title company is if we are able to have these things communicated to them in advance, they too might not be thinking about the fullness of all of the residents who they need to engage at any time.
Right.
With their timeline, their capacity, the time frame for calls and appointments. We want them to be able to think those things in advance, because we've said again, we're trying to minimize the residents from having unnecessary mental, emotional, or physical burden.
Right.
So if they have to go somewhere and engage, we want people to be ready to receive them
Mhm.
in honorable ways. We also just wanted to indicate too that prior, since you'll be reaching out or communicating with them, that they have the opportunity also to understand what we were just talking about in regards to the cashier's check part. Because if there is anything that has to happen between the title company and the bank, anything like that, we would like to know all of those steps in the process in advance. The residents would like to be able to have an opportunity to give some feedback if need be, because they can help make these things go by smoother.
Right.
And if there's something that that they're expecting on their end, or that they need to process on their end, we would just want to know that to help prepare the residents. So when they go, they already know, and people do not have to get there and be unprepared.
Gotcha. Okay. And then the last two pieces have to do with taxes. I know that Councilmember Morel was working on that piece, so I don't have the answers to the taxes questions.
Well, all we ask is that, similar to what we were sharing before about things that people have to check on.
Yeah.
Is that it be checked on because, we're cognizant that with the city actually, purchasing these properties back, if they were purchasing properties even during that 1 year window, right, where they're looking for homes, the expectation would be that there be a pro rata approach with those taxes and the residents are not carrying that burden. We understand that they wouldn't carry that burden once title changes, but we're also being very cognizant, and I'm so glad you're here today, Mr. Threat, is that Ms. Sheena was the person who was the property was the example for this process to ensure, and we're so grateful we did because we caught all kind of hiccups unnecessarily in that process. One of the things that transpired is that the previous appraiser, I won't get into that. I will just say that there were documents in the back that indicated that, for example, a person might have an outstanding deed that's separate and apart from what we're talking about. Somebody might have some taxes that they owe on their property for unforeseen things that may have been all kinds of different issues. And if we were to list them out, we'd find that the city would be responsible for many. So that what we're saying is that in this particular case, because of Ms. Sheena's situation, she owes, she has a portion that she owes in her taxes. She should be able to go up to the counter and not be prohibited from getting her money because of that, because that's in terms of the city. We also believe that it's well within the city's right, because they are acquiring these properties back from the residents, to waive those taxes. And you don't have to give an answer now, but I would like for you to check, because we are certain that that is possible. We also understand that when the city is snatching people's properties back, all kind of other things happen there. And if there are nuances to that, meaning that somebody else, let's say, for example, jumped up in some kind of auction and paid taxes, and there was a difference between that, then we would understand that the residents would get their buyout check, their cashier's check for what's due to them, and the difference in a separate cashier's check if that had to be attended to. But we know that those are options. So if you would just look into that, please.
Okay, so that leads me to the conclusion of the questions for today, but that does now allow us for many to-do items moving
Yes.
forward. So I just want to kind of, if it's okay with everybody, we're going to recap the to-do items now moving forward. One is the contacting of Mr. Baker, which I have committed that I will do, CCing the city attorney's office along with the CAO and Mr. Threat. Then next, what's very important is the timeline to get Mr. Baker on board, to set him up with city contracting to make sure that he is on board as quickly as possible. We will absolutely aim for this week. I can't make any promises on that, though. The next piece that I have committed to is contacting Bayou Title, because we would like Bayou Title to come before this task force as quickly as possible. And I'd like to set them up for a task force meeting in the very near future. So I will take care of, my office will take care of contacting them. In the meantime, we do have some information regarding the relocation assistance and follow-up questions that I could not personally answer. So I will forward those questions to Councilmember Morel and ask that he get those questions back in writing to you all, hopefully by tomorrow.
Thank you.
Any other questions? And we do need to take a look at our calendars for the next meeting too.
What, would you like to make a recommendation for the next task force meeting? We understand that, there's gonna need to be, some time in between in regards to what's transpiring with the appraiser. There still can be some conversation about what's transpiring here. So it's not necessary that it happen within this week, but I want the residents to feel comfortable.
Yeah, and as soon as I found out information on any of my items, I will email you all directly.
We
like,
appreciate
yeah,
it.
immediately.
We also want to say too, that this last communication that we received is the kind of communication that we would like to continue to have going forward, because it just makes things move. And if any one of us finds some problems on the front end, we can just address them on the front end and not have to have unnecessary antagonism.
Right, right. We can always come back, you know, if you want a week from today on the
Okay.
12th,
What about, I'm sorry, say it again.
a week from today on the 12th. Kind of same time, same place, 4 o'clock on, if it's available, like the chamber's available. We can also do it earlier. The chamber's available earlier too. Anywhere between 2 to 4.
4 o'clock. 4 o'clock
Just
the
depends on
12th?
people's work schedules.
Okay, we're checking with another board member real quick.
Oh, actually, you know what, guys? Hang on. Mr. Threat would really like to attend the meeting and he has to be out of the city on the 12th. Can we look at the 13th instead, which is Tuesday?
Well, here's the thing, in the context, unless there's a question, if you're gonna send that information over that you're speaking about,
Right.
that meeting could even happen, and I think you just said either the 20th, that's a Tuesday, it doesn't conflict with one of the board members. We're trying to make sure
Yeah, the 20th is fine too, right? What's that look like in the afternoon?
Yeah, council member, that's open. I just want to point out that yeah, that's just for some folks, not me, but there might be some folks because that's when schools start closing for winter break. So as long as everybody can make that, there'll be some, yeah.
Are you okay on
the
the?
tw-
Okay,
Not
the 20,
Mr. Threat is good on the 20th.
okay,
Yeah, I see. it.
time,
We could do any time. It looks like it's all, the chamber's open all
It's just
afternoon.
ABO, but
What time is it? Has it all day? So what time's ABO, over 4?
it could be over.
We can do it at 4 because we have
Okay, 20th at 4.
ABO during
So-
the day.
let me just mention something that I don't want it to get lost in the sauce on this as well. And I want to go on record as saying that December 20th date is not NOT to prohibit forward movement on these things. It means that forward movement is happening on these things, and we're meeting on that date to report back where we are, because communication will have happened in between.
Mhm.
We would also like, by that time, to have the residents be able to provide a status update in terms of what's happening with the appraisals. Because if the communication with the appraiser can happen this week, the appraiser can get started as soon as possible.
Sure.
And the sooner that can happen, the sooner those can be resolved. The desire on the residents' part, and they understand that there's transactional things that have to happen around this, but to have this wrapped up before winter break.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
the goal.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah, so you have, of course, my commitment to send you all communications as quickly as possible. I'll email you all. But the other thing too is I remain available if you want to just check in with me in my office for any of the residents that want to come by. And if you want to chat about any of the things, once I send emails and just, you know, kind of talk some things out, I'll be available. as well.
What we can do also in terms of the residents is when the communications happen and they send you back something like that, if there's a need for it, then the board, you all can decide and
Sure.
alert you. Okay.
That sounds great. Okay, so the next meeting, just so everybody's clear and everybody hears it, it's going to be at 4 PM on the 20th. All right, mark your calendars. Oh, I'm sorry. I do have one person who wants to speak, Joan Gardner. Hey, come on up.
Thank you, council. Thank you, council, for allowing me to speak. I've been here before. I'm supporting Gordon Plaza. As I've communicated, and I hope that Councilwoman Moreno, that we can speak with your office as well. I'm speaking with Keith, and also Councilman King at this point. I'm also seeking a fully funded relocation on other issues. So I'm not trying to get attached to because apparently this is environmental issues, but there are nevertheless issues that the city of New Orleans is indeed responsible for. One of the concerns that I still have about this whole process and how it's moved forward is that we still have the elephant in the room regarding the city of New Orleans and the administration of the city of New Orleans, particularly Mayor Cantrell, and the signing of the contract with Cher Garner. when it was smart cities, the council did take the position that she had hired outside counsel without going through the city council. As you know, I sent various letters to you guys saying the writing was on the wall. If you read through the contract. So I wasn't surprised when everything went the way that it went, which I told you at the time I felt was avoidable. And so I'm asking the council to have accountability for how these processes are working or not working, including the administration, specifically Mayor Cantrell, and how that contract was signed. Reviewing that contract even now, because the question is still, what are the services that Sheriff Garner's providing beyond making a big mess of everything? Including the hiring of Mr. Jim Thorns, which somehow or another, he didn't have a RFP, it seems, because I've done public records request, which the RFP was seemingly required, necessary, when the Gordon Plaza residents didn't see the need for it, for Sheriff Garner, and then they become this, I don't even know what you call it, to then decide, be the in-between person to decide how this is going to get processed. There were also some issues with Mr. Thorns as well. If you look at his past history regarding his serving on the tax commission and what happened in that given situation. So first of all, I don't even think it was appropriate that he was a consideration for the city of New Orleans in the first place. Sheriff Garner, I still feel that contract needs to be reviewed, and that ultimately it doesn't meet the standards any more than the smart cities meets the standards. And if the council took a position on that, the council should take a position on this as well. And it should have been a little bit more aggressive in the beginning, because if the council had been, this could have been avoided. And I basically said that to y'all. And the many letters in which I didn't get responses from, I did speak to Andrew on the phone a couple of times about that and about the issues that I'm dealing with as well. But I think it's especially important that the city of New Orleans moving forward, that we stop the corruption, that we start to have the checks and balances and internal controls that we need. So this is about a matter of internal controls to prevent this from happening in the future, because this was avoidable, and it's cost these people time and money. So at the end of the day, I'm asking this city council to take a more aggressive stance and regarding the Sheriff Garner contract. And if the contract doesn't meet the standards, the money's there, redistribute it to them. And put processes in place so that this doesn't happen again, because Sheriff Garner should have never been in the picture. And Jim Thorns should have never been in the picture. And that's exactly what I said to y'all in writing. That's exactly what I said before this council. And it took all of this at their expense. So I'm asking the council to be proactive and address the things that need to be addressed, because if it doesn't happen, then it's going to be a repeat. And this needs to end, because this has been, the situation I have, like Gordon Plaza, it's been decades long. We're talking about 50 years for my family. I'm only 40, going on 46 in December. So this has been ongoing for my family before I was born. This has to end if the city wants to be a better place. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gardner. Appreciate it. Okay. All right, everyone. Well, it looks like we've got a plan, and we have a next meeting scheduled. Appreciate everyone coming out again. See you all next 2 weeks.